Great stuff. So today we're going to focus our topic around insider risk. So insider risk management is one of the many components in the Microsoft 365 suite, and Microsoft 365 admins with an E5 license can turn on insider risk management analytics in the tenants today. So many CISOs are not only concerned about the external adversaries, but also require a lens on what's happening inside the organization. So there are many examples of insider threats, employees stealing data, IP theft, insider trading, data leakage, etc. And it's an area that's definitely top of mind for multiple business functions. So IRM is user entity behavior analytics. The tool recognizes abnormal user behavior and surfaces potential risks to compliance officers. Some organizations will say, look, we have Teams DLP set up, so we're secure. But most DLP solutions are very transactional. Although highly important, it's not meant for a lot of the complexities inherent with discovering insider risks. So signals that would feed into the Microsoft IRM solution can emerge from across the Microsoft 365 suite or from external data sources through IRM connectors. So an example could be a user hands in a resignation date in 3 months' time. This data source is surfaced through a HR connector. They've been downloading some sensitive data from a classified SharePoint library, which isn't part of their usual behavior. They've tried to transfer information onto a USB, and they've also been using an increased amount of profanity across the Microsoft Teams platform. So these combined data points are all the signs of a disgruntled employee, and the specific activities would trigger the IP theft policy, and a compliance officer should thus investigate. So we know about 80% of all insider risk is non-malicious. Whether it's malicious or accidental, it's important to have that view and have that lens of what's going on. And identifying and remediating insider risk is even a priority for Microsoft CISO Brett Arsenal. So within Microsoft, we have over 800,000 SharePoint sites. So the engineering team needed to build a robust system to cull through all the data to recognize the IRM patterns and then surface that to our compliance teams. And two of the most prevalent risks are data theft and data leakage. Both can have huge financial implications for organizations, and this is only compounded since the pandemic. So I always reference the slide dog gang example. This is where 4 employees left a large car manufacturer to go to a direct competitor. However, before they left, one member stole proprietary information and trade secrets, all sent externally via email with the subject line, "Use slide dog." So the stolen information helped the competitor leapfrog past years of R&D work, and this meant they were able to go to market with a similar product to the one they were competing with at a much faster pace. So they were only caught because one of the gang members sent a proprietary document to their old email address with the new competitor's logo on. So insider risks are a universal concern, and there seems to be more and more cases being reported every month. So in a piece of research Microsoft conducted, 93% of businesses said they were concerned about insider risk, and 66% stated they were very concerned. Now, the effort required to identify these risks and violations are not trivial. Think about the number of people accessing resources and communicating with each other inside the organization. And as the natural cycle of people entering and leaving the company, how do you quickly determine what is an intentional risk versus an unintentional one at scale? And how do you achieve this level of visibility while aligning to the cultural, legal, and privacy requirements in which you operate? For example, truly malicious insiders do things such as steal IP, turn off security controls, and/or harass others at work. But there are many more situations in which an insider might not even know they're causing a risk to the organization. For example, they just could be excited about something new they're working on and decide to send files or photos to tell others about it. So this situation has become even more acute now. Remote and hybrid working while protecting employees from exposure to the virus has fundamentally increased the risk vector landscape. So many organizations we've spoken to are using a fractured and expensive approach to identify risks, or insider risks, I should say. One organization captured signals using a user activity monitoring solution and fed these signals into a separate user entity behavior analytics solution with the hopes of finding the insider risk needle in the haystack. So we know from our own experience that not only is this approach not scalable, but often it results in a lot of noise and lacks case enrichment. In addition, deploying UAM and UEBA solution takes considerable engineering resources to configure, maintain signal, to configure and maintain signal ingestion scripts, identify rules, and manage the endpoint agents. So we found that when organizations need to remediate the risks when identified, they required another tool, as these type individual solutions typically didn't have integrated workflows built in. So to effectively identify insider risks, one must be able to quickly reason over sequences of activities, which when correlated together signify heightened risk. Furthermore, as employees are trusted insiders and protecting corporate culture and end user privacy are important considerations, being able to collaborate across security, HR, legal is a requirement when it comes to managing insider risk effectively. So with privacy built in, pseudo minimization turned on by default, and strong role-based access controls, Microsoft Insider Risk Management is leveraged by organizations globally to identify and remediate risks with integrated collaboration workflow. So with that, let's get on to the fun part, and maybe I'll hand over to Graham to go through a demo of the solution and what it looks like.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dan. So what it would be good to see within here is the actual portal. So the Insider Risk Management portal can be found within the Compliance Center. And you'll see it on the screen here. If you go down to Insider Risk Management, this gives you an overview, a snapshot about all the different risks that are happening within your environment. So here we can see different policy matches, we can see active cases. If we scroll down, we have some new capabilities that are in preview at the moment called Insider Risk Analytics. And that means without even turning on or configuring a policy, you can get those statistics around possible risky activity that's happening with your environment that you may not have known about. All of the information is there under the covers, so we know when Dan is trying to send an email out, or he's in a meeting, we're taking that telemetry and enhancing that capability. So for example, here we can see the results from my last scan. We can see that 16.7% of users performed an exfiltration activity. And then we get an example here of around users copying content to USB drives, or sharing, downloading SharePoint files, or maybe they are moving sensitive files around. So items that are classified, we can also detect that as well. So we have some capabilities called Microsoft Information Protection that is persistently writing that metadata and that protection to that content, but now we can follow that data wherever it goes in our environment and outside our environment as well. And right at the bottom, we can see the top exfiltration activities. We can see that the recommendation here is to set up a general data leaks policy. So if you're using data loss prevention policies in Microsoft today, you can actually reuse these. And when we go in and actually create a policy, you'll see the drop down there of all the policies that you have within your environment already. And then we can create insider risk policies that's closely monitoring the activities and the behaviors around that. And just like Dan said, it's not just around the data that we're following, but it's also user behavior. So, I might log on from 9 to 5. I might handle some sensitive information on a daily basis. But as that behavior changes, now I'm logging on late at night, 7 p.m. at night. Now I'm copying USB or trying to print some confidential information there. That's where those activities can be rolled up or surfaced up into this environment, and that gives us a way of reviewing that data and then deciding, was it an intentional behavior or was it non-intentional? We're all busy at home, we're all working from home still. Hitting send on a confidential file at the wrong place, it happens. We have capabilities there like data loss prevention to tell users they shouldn't be sending that information out or even blocking that. But we also want to have this balance between productivity and security and compliance as well. So this is where we can analyze that. Let's go back to the Insider Risk Management portal. Again, we can see the items or the alerts that we need to review in here. We can see the severity of these as well. So everything within the Microsoft platform will give you the highest severity or the highest risk score first. These are the things you need to go in and investigate first. I have the users here that are not anonymized, so we've not obfuscated their names within this demo environment, but by default, we want to be able to protect the identity of those people. Like I said, we want to look at the evidence first rather than say, hey, I can see Dan there, or Dan's a friend. I might need to just close that case for now. We don't want to have that bias against what alerts are going to be surfaced up and how I feel about those. And if we scroll down, we can also see the policies that have the most activity within here. So you can see the top one, which is PCI data leaks. We've got 3 active alerts, and we've acknowledged about 7 of those. So the way this works is when we go in and create a policy, when different activities trigger an alert, this is where I can go in and again see this high-level view about the activity over the last 30 days. I can see over the last 6 days, we've had some really severe alerts that I may need to look into. If we scroll down a little bit further, this is where I can see Megan Bowen, the famous Megan Bowen. She is going to leave the organization, but she's looking to take information with her. All right, and we can see this needs a review. So when we click on those, we get this activity blade open. We get all of the user activity that are associated with that alert. So for example, we can see that she's trying to delete files or maybe trying to remove evidence that she's doing something, or she's moving sensitive files into a new location, maybe again to hide the fact that she's going to take that information out of the organization. And then of those events, we can see how many files were moved. So we can see 144 events of sensitive files have been moved to a new location. But using the built-in sensitive information types we have, we can see the system scanned that there's some passport numbers in here, social security, some tax identification numbers, bank account numbers, and then 6 of those files contained confidential files as well. So things that are classified. So this looks pretty severe to me. What I can do here is also see a risk score. So this is out of 100. Obviously, the higher the number, the most riskiest the activity it is. And we get intelligence around these metrics as well. So using things like machine learning, we can see that there's an unusual amount of activity by that user, and it's 750% above average. That's pretty bad, right? They're going to do something. So knowing this information, reviewing that, I can confirm all of the alerts and then create what we call as a case. And with a case, what that means, we go up to the top here and click on the Cases tab. This means now we can have a case name. We can have external contributors to this case. So if we need to get legal involved or HR or somebody else like their manager to come in and review this case, we can do that from here as well. And we have some really cool capabilities now that allow you to, once you've created a case, automatically spin up a team in Microsoft Teams. And that's a secure area where we can have a conversation around this particular case. What's the ongoing action? What's the evidence that we have in front of us? So out of these cases, let's jump into IRM 005. This is a HR case that I've already got open. Let's have a look at the evidence within here. So again, we get these dashboards about the types of information that's being picked up within the alerts and now within the case. We can see right down the bottom here was the content that's been detected. I was talking about things that are copying or being downloaded from SharePoint and if they were classified or not. This is where we can see that granular information about there was 1.1 thousand files that contained a sensitivity label, right? And we can see those being highly confidential. We can see that there's 6,000 items that contain sensitive information types. So we've got some custom sensitive information types based on keywords or regex or exact data matches within the platform that we can define and be able to have that information surfaced up. We can also see the top SharePoint sites, the sites with sensitivity labels, the recipients that the information is being sent to, and any external domains from there. What's really important is we all know if you're going to take information from your organization to take it somewhere else, you're not going to hand in your notice and then, take the data with you, are you? Normally, people will start kind of drip feeding that information out if they can decide they were working on a really important project. They've spent their sweat and blood on this paperwork. I want to take this with me and take it to my new employer where I can showcase, what I've done in the past. They're going to have done that kind of 3 or 6 months previously to whenever they're going to hand in the notice, right? So we can see a timeline here of the last 6 months of all those activities building up to those milestones when they handed in their resignation date. So we can take that external signal and then bring it inside a risk. We can also bring in other external signals like physical door access. So if you've got an archive room, a physical room in your building, and you use your badge in order to access that room, then we can bring in those signals as well. What we've got on the screen here, all these different colored dots. Over on the left-hand side, we can see what is the riskiest behavior with those and how many items are there. You can actually click on these items to get more information. And then the different colors associated with this key down the bottom here. So these yellow ones are around collection of data. We can see that there's deletion of data here with these kind of pinky red dots. And then there's some security violations. So Dan mentioned earlier on, if you're a person trying to exfiltrate data, then you might want to be able to turn off or try and turn off some of the security capabilities. And that tamper protection is built into Windows 10. But the moment we detect that, we can surface up that alert and give it a higher severity score against that person then. On the left-hand side, we get a bit more metadata around, these unusual volume of sensitive data being read. Maybe they're looking for some files here. We can see this activity for this particular user is 268% above their normal average behavior. We can see files being deleted, probably trying to obfuscate some data here. Sensitive files being accessed. We can also see from the 365 advanced audit log as well what a person is searching for. So if they know that there's like a project name, or they've heard of a project name that they're typing in those search terms into SharePoint or Office 365, the audit log is actually picking that up as well. So we can build up the timeline of events of when that user was searching or whether they accessed the files when they shouldn't have. We can also, as long as those files reside in Office 365, we can go into the Content Explorer. So we can see this person who's copied to USB, or they've printed it, or they've tried to send it via Bluetooth, for example. There's lots of different activities that we can monitor within here. We can see the content in this kind of cut down version of advanced eDiscovery, and we can preview this content as well. So for example, I can click on this Excel file, and we're using our online viewers here to see not just a preview of that file, but we can also see the tabs within that Excel spreadsheet. It's pretty nifty. We can also go into the case notes. So this is just free text, so we can type in our notes directly into this case. Or like I said, we can bring in external contributors into this case as well. So if we decide this particular case is something that was done unintentionally, it was part of their role, maybe they shouldn't have been kind of working in that way or even downloading that type of content, we could decide to send an email notice. Now, if this person or their identity is obfuscated to me as the reviewer, I would see just an ID here. But what I can do is actually choose a notice template that I've already preset up within the system. It's going to send it to that person. And then I've got a subject and a message that I can send to that person, basically saying, hey, we've seen this type of behavior, slap on the wrist, go and read our policy documents again, and then we can close the case. What's cool about that is because we can see 6 months in the past, the history of all those events, we can also see where an insider risk reviewer has gone in closed case as well. So we can see multiple closed case, maybe that's building up to something bigger. So again, we see all of that evidence within here. If it was something that this person had done intentionally, then what we can do is escalate for investigation. And what this is going to do is I can give it a name. So maybe this is case, what did we say it was? IRM 005. We can put some notes in here as well. And what it's going to do is hand off to our advanced eDiscovery. So our eDiscovery teams then can collect the evidence, not just the content, but also the timeline of events. Maybe we need to bring in an external reviewer of that, or again, legal of that. So we're building up a case against that person. And just quickly, what that looks like, if we jump over to advanced eDiscovery, is that handoff between insider risk management and eDiscovery is seamless. So you'll see here, I've got an insider risk management case already in eDiscovery. We can see that the handoff has happened here. Again, we get it. Very detailed information about the job status within here. And then I can go through the process and use predictive coding, machine learning to basically cull down just the information that I need for that particular case. But again, that's for another time and a totally different product there. Let's jump back to insider risk. So we may want to set up a policy. We've had a look at analytics. It was saying that we need to set up a general data leakage policy. So we have 3 different templates that we can go in and set up. Here under the policies tab, you can see all of the different policies I already have. If we click on create policy, this is where we can choose between things like data theft, policy or security policy violations, or data leaks. So this is a new one that's in preview at the moment, this security policy violations. And what it means is actually talking to the endpoint. So we have a sensor that's built into Windows 10 that we can light up, either part of endpoint DLP or part of our Defender for Endpoint product. And once that sensor is turned on, it's very, very hard to turn it off. And what that's looking for is these detected activities here. So installing malware to get around security capabilities that may potentially harm not just that machine, but also corporate data as well. Somebody trying to disable security features on that device, or physical access to priority locations like buildings or server rooms. So we can surface all of that information up within this particular template here. And as we go through that setup process, you'll see how easy it is. So if we do security policy, okay, we can scope this to all users or environment if we wanted to, or we could scope it to specifically users and groups that we're interested in. We can prioritize then what are the kind of risky activities I want to give a higher priority to. So if there's specific SharePoint sites or particular classification labels, we can say, hey, if you see this classification of confidential, then give that a higher score, and that'll surface up that risky activity within insider risk management. And then these are all the different policy indicators that I can choose from this particular policy. So here I can see different security violations, physical door access, and then we can also bring in signals from Microsoft Cloud App Security. So things that are coming from anonymous IPs or activity after termination, left the organization and maybe, the card still works. We can bring in those activities as well. And then we can customize this if we really wanted to, and then we can hit submit. So that's how easy it is to create a new policy within insider risk management. Like I said, if you're using DLP, so data loss prevention policies within Office 365 today, you can actually pick those up. So let's show you what that looks like. So data leaks, general data leaks, which is what the analytics was telling me to go away and set up. So if we do DLP insider risk management, we're going to scope it to all users. We're not going to customize that today. And then we can say if a user matches a DLP policy and we click on the drop down, these are all the policies I've already got set up within the platform. So if I say, hey, look at any matches to GDPR, then we can surface up that policy inside risk management, and then we can see all the evidence that comes with that. And you'll also see a number now of different indicators. There's a ton of different indicators that we can choose from. Things like deleting from a SharePoint site, or going into our recycle bin and deleting it there, or sharing a file to somebody outside the organization. This is where I can see those other indicators from the endpoint. So being able to see whether a user is copying and pasting some sensitive information from like a corporate app to a non-Microsoft app, for example. And then kind of a sequence of detection. So we can see whether a user is trying to download and obfuscate it, or change the name, or change the extensions within that. So you'll see that information there as well. So that's just a quick overview about how to create the different policies. I just wanted to quickly show you some other capabilities before we finish today, which is who is watching the watchers. So this is some new capabilities we have around the audit log for people who are authorized to go in and view all of the activities that are associated with those policies here. And you can see that when we go into this, you can see the metadata around who is viewing case notes, who's actually viewing the content through the Content Explorer. So it gives you, again, a very audible trace of who is doing what and who's accessing information. So just like everything within the compliance portal, we have role-based access permissions. So not everyone gets this out of the box. You need to define who has the appropriate rights to be able to access not just the insider risk, but also who can view the content within those cases as well. So you can go away and have a read about that. And there's some extra capabilities that are here as well around our APIs. So this allows you to take that audit log specifically for insider risk management and then put that into a SIEM solution of your choice, or if you're using a Microsoft SIEM or a cloud native platform, which is Sentinel, we can bring all of those signals, all of that metadata into Sentinel, and then we can do additional triaging within there, or we could do things like logic apps. So if you're using Power Automate today, we can use Power Automate in here as well to say, hey, if a particular user does something to trigger an insider risk policy, go and look up their manager from Azure AD, and then email that manager to say, look, we've seen this type of activity. What would you like to do? And then we could give that manager 3 different options, as in, I know what they're doing. Don't worry about it. Please close the case. Or it could be, hey, I don't know what they're doing. Go and investigate it for me and keep me up to date. So we have some automation now built into the platform to do something very easy as notifications, or very complex workflows and playbooks, depending on how you want to automate this entire process as well. I just want to say thank you very much for listening to us today. I'm going to hand back to Dan just in closing.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. I just think I just want to thank everyone again for joining the session and listening to our section on insider risk management. What I would advise is that you can avail today of compliance workshops, which obviously do include the insider risk management suite. And then in addition, if you have any E5 users out there, switch on insider risk analytics just to kind of get a sense of maybe some of those potential risks surfacing in the organization today. And again, reach out if there's anything we can support you with, and we will park it there.